17 to 14. Cowboys out in front. Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneaking. He gets the touchdown. And the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions.
All right. What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. You can find me on Twitter at Packers_access. If you'd like to email the show, you can send a message to PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. I want to say that today's show is brought to you by Fertile Ground Ranch Discipleship Ministry. It was birthed out of the burden to help those in the community and congregations who've come out of a difficult past and addictive lifestyle. We are actually giving away an away jersey, Quay Walker autographed Beckett-style jersey. Got the certificate of authenticity, all that stuff. And we're going to be giving that away to one lucky listener. All you got to do is go to my Twitter page at Packers_access. Click on the tweet that's pinned at the top of the page. Just retweet that. Make sure you're following the account. That'll enter you into the contest one time. And also, if you'd like to enter yourself into the contest multiple times and give to a good cause, you'll see Fertile Ground Ranch Discipleship Ministries link there attached to that tweet as well. For every $5 donated, you can have yourself entered into that contest one additional time. So, with all that being said, we got a special podcast for you guys today, a little roundtable action, and we're basically going to take an hour here, and we're going to fix the Packers problem. I don't understand why the Packers organization is struggling so hard with fixing these things. We already know what to do. We're the experts, right? So we're just going to hop in here and basically somebody make sure you send this link to Mark Murphy, and we're good to go. So first of all, I just want to introduce everybody. We got JJ from Cheese and Packers, JJ Leahy.
Howdy.
Got Mr. Ryan, Pack Daddy Schlip, the guy that does like 17 podcasts a day, and my favorite being the political rant hotline that he's got set up there for Packernet After Dark. And we've got a special guest on today, one of the listeners, Mr. Thomas Austin. How you doing, Thomas?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic.
Good deal, man. All right, so let's do it. Let's just get right into it, guys. I sent a couple questions out to these guys, and we were just kind of throwing some ideas back and forth. And I think we would all agree it's not one specific thing that's wrong with the Packers, with this 2022 season being down. However, there are a few things that stand out to me where it's like, man, that is a glaring problem, right? Staring us right in the face. So we're just going to kind of go around the room here and get everybody's take. And I'll kind of kick things off to kind of set the tone. Let's start off with the first question I asked you guys. What do you think is the most to blame for the Packers off year in 2022? And for me, on the offensive side of the ball, and I've been watching a lot of film, there's a lot of chatter about, is Aaron Rodgers washed up? Is he done? We did a poll. That poll was kind of cool. I didn't expect the poll to come back as favored in Rodgers' side as maybe Ryan would have. It's funny. Me and Ryan, we had differing opinions throughout the season, and everything changes as you go through the NFL calendar year. But it's funny because on my side, I'm catching heat like he's washed up. I can't believe you're just kissing his rear end. And on Ryan's side, it's like, why are you a Rodgers hater? And we're both really just trying to be realistic, going, okay, how is he actually playing? Where is he making mistakes? This and that. But for me, when I watch the tape, guys, on offense, it's the tight formations that I'm having a problem with. This RPO game. To me, it seems as if, just like the read option several years ago, the league has caught on to the RPO. One of the guys that made it really, really successful in the NFL was Doug Peterson in Philly. They went and won a Super Bowl with it, essentially. They ran the rock a lot. They ran the RPO a lot. And, it's funny, he's in Jacksonville and they're struggling, right? Not that Jacksonville's a powerhouse, but you just don't see the RPO game, as effective as it was there in Philly, that Super Bowl run. You kind of seen it in Indy a little bit too there with Frank Reich, but that was more last year and the year before. So for me, I think the league has kind of caught on to it. I did a little study, I think it was a couple weeks ago on a pod, and of the three most important stats that Packer fans as a whole said, hey, these are the most important things from an offensive standpoint. Basically everybody, I think it was 40% of the league that runs this style of offense, not necessarily RPO heavy, but that wide zone boot scheme, everything ranked out to about 18th. So we're like middle of the pack of all the teams combined in the entire National Football League. So I think you've got a little bit of that effect. But every time we see these RPOs, it always, to me, it seems like everything is just so tight. There's so much traffic. Sam Holman posted a video on Twitter that showed an RPO. Now, hindsight's 2020, but when you look at the play, it's like, man, Aaron should have handed that ball off, right? But he's reading the inside linebacker, and what you have is Coach Hahn jumping in the chat and going, nah, I kind of think he read it right, looking at the backer. The only problem was the guard didn't block his guy. But then I think it was like Ryan might have pointed out, if he does throw to the flat in the RPO, which is what he was trying to do to DeGuara is going to be hit, and it's a 3-yard gain. So it's like there are multiple things wrong with this, and I personally believe it's because everything is so jammed in tight. If I'm a defensive coordinator and they come to the line and I can read the future and they say, all right, it's just going to be a short pass here in the flat, and they've got everybody in that tight, we're in a perfect position to defend that. That's just what I'm seeing. I want to know where the crossers are. I want to know where the smash concepts, the drives, the meshes, all those things that really opened things up last year. How many times last year, the last 2 years, guys, did we see deep crossers across the field connect? And it wasn't necessarily Tay. I mean, you've seen it in the playoff game there last year against the Niners with the last play of the game and Alan Lazard running open across the field. It's like where are those concepts? Those intermediate passing, the intermediate passing, I should say. So that's kind of how I see offense. And on defense, it's real straightforward. It's run defense, man. We have pulled so much out of run defense, it's not even funny. So let's go around the horn here. Those are kind of the things that I think are the biggest problem. Like I said, on defense too, you guys have heard me say it ad nauseum. Free safety is the biggest issue. 46.4 PFF grade. You got to sit Savage and give Rudy Ford a shot. Linebacker with Quay. Quay had 2 great games back-to-back. I don't say great, decent games back-to-back his last 2 games, although he got ejected there early in the last game that we watched. I would like to see a little more rotation at linebacker. Maybe he's not quite ready yet. I think his PFF grade is a 51.3. And the defensive front I want to see is Kenny Reed and Lowry. That's what I would like to see up front, because this TJ Slayton stuff just isn't working for me. But that being said, JJ, what do you think's the biggest issue, bro?
It's clearly Rashawn Gary. He's just not cutting it. I'm kidding. He sucks. I think it'll be interesting going through all of our 4 takes on this, because as you said at the top, there's so many problems with the Packers that I think we each could talk for an hour and not repeat anything the other guys said. For me, I have a lot of frustrations with leadership with the team and accountability at quite a few levels. And I go back to, last year, I don't think the Packers finished on a strong note. And I'm not just talking about the 49ers game. They were kind of falling apart toward the end of the season. And we heard Tunyon talk after the season ended about how, we just, quit believing in ourselves and started getting down on ourselves and thinking we weren't that good, kind of out of nowhere. And I feel like the Packers team we're seeing in 2022 is really the same team we saw for the last couple games of the season last year. And to me, I'm looking at the way they're playing, and they don't seem to believe in themselves or in each other. I think there is a big confidence issue. To me, also, you look at how sloppy everybody is, how unprepared and undisciplined they are, and you can have 9 or 10 guys all doing their job on a play, and 1 or 2 guys fall apart, and the whole thing just collapses. And then the very next play, you get the same thing, but it's a different 2 guys who are falling apart, and there's no right. No ability to stay consistent from play to play of having everybody put their best effort out there. And you see at times. I think back to a few drives in the Bears game, in the Bucks game, even in the Patriots game, where it all does come together, especially on offense, and they can still be lethal. We saw that they can move the ball with efficiency, and then these drives start getting killed by stupid mistakes. It blew my mind when we had the botched handoff from Rodgers to Dillon in week 2, and we had the exact same thing happen again like 4 weeks later, which by that point I was no longer feeling surprised. But the overall unprepared sloppiness is just killing me. And my philosophy when it comes to a lot of areas of life with leadership, but particularly in football, is the longer a problem is presenting, I think the higher you have to take it up the command chain. So, on an individual play, a guy, screws up, he drops the ball, whatever. I'm mad at that player. Like, come on, man, you're better than that. Why did you drop that ball? Now, if you are continuing to do this for a couple games, I quit blaming the player and I start looking at his coach and I'm saying, listen, man, it's your job to have this guy ready. And if he's not the dude, bench him and put somebody else out there. It's no longer the player's problem if the player has demonstrated that he's just not good enough.
Yep.
So I'm looking, I'm no longer frustrated with Darnell Savage. I'm actually no longer frustrated with Ryan Downard, who, from my ivory tower, way too far away to make any really accurate judgment call. I think Ryan Downard appears to be in over his head if both of his safeties, including Adrian Amos, are playing completely incompetent football. I'm no longer mad at him. I'm starting to not even be mad at Joe Barry about this anymore. I'm going, listen, Matt LaFleur, the guys underneath you are demonstrating a complete inability to solve this problem. It's now on your desk. Why are you not going over and getting in Joe Barry's face and saying, bench Savage and put somebody else in? And guess, you know what? If you don't feel that you have anybody better than Savage, go talk to Goody. Say, you didn't give me enough horses to put this all together. So the longer any of these problems go on, and there are numerous problems on both offense and defense where I'm looking at it, I really am blaming Matt LaFleur in a lot of areas for saying there are a lot of things going on, whether it's Rodgers not being held accountable for not throwing to the guy that the play was designed for, or predetermining who he was going to throw to before the ball snapped. Like, I'm sorry, Matt. I know that you respect Joe Barry. I know you respect Aaron Rodgers. You're their boss. It is your job to hold them accountable to a higher standard and get answers from them for why they are not executing the job the way that you want them to do it. And if they are executing the way you want it, then I have serious problems with your plan, because it's a crappy plan and it's not working. So a lot of problems on both sides of the ball, but I think at this point, there's just too many arrows pointing to Matt LaFleur that he needs to fix this. And I'm starting to want Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst to, come out and make some statements about what's going on. I hope they're talking to Matt LaFleur and trying to help him come up with some plans for how to fix this, or asking him what his plans are. But the other thing is that I think there are enough issues with the way the team is playing in some sore spots on the roster that I had concerns about before the season began, where before the games started, I was saying, all right, I don't like this plan, but I trust the team. I trust Gutekunst that they think that, just having two safeties on the roster, or two running backs on the roster, or not having edge depth, or not really going out and getting any kind of a real answer at wide receiver, and just hoping that guys were going to play better, hoping that Rodgers was going to adapt and throw to the open guy rather than just trying to find a new Devontae. I do have a lot of questions about the leadership of the team at several of the higher levels. And if nothing else, just for their lack of holding the guys lower down accountable for the decisions they're making and the quality of results that they're putting on the field. So, and I think we all can point to several areas in the game where there are just some things that are painfully obvious. Like, you need to commit to the run game. You need to bench Savage. Rodgers needs to throw to the guy that the play is designed for. Stuff like that, where it's like, man, we could really move the needle a lot in just a couple of these small areas, and the team is not doing it. And that to me is, like I said, I'm no longer frustrated with all the lower level people. I'm frustrated with their bosses for not making some changes, not benching some guys, not taking away playing time from guys who are not giving their effort, or who are not putting in the work in practice. I mean, we don't know who all is not giving their all in practice, but we know who are going above and beyond in practice. We know about the extra work that Romeo Dobbs and Rashawn Gary are doing to fix any problems with their game, to take their game to the next level. Those are guys I'm going to reward with extra snaps. And to me, from my vantage point of Michigan, very far away from Lambeau, it does seem like some guys care a lot more than others. And it's surprising to me that the guys who don't appear to care as much about improving their craft are still getting so many reps.
Yeah, I think you make great points. I thought the same thing when I looked across the board and I seen just how off everything was. It's like, man, it's hard to say, and I kind of understand Ryan's point here too, and what he's been talking about on the pod. It's hard to look at this roster and go, yeah, everybody just sucks. That's all it is. It's just a sucky roster. Like, sorry, that ain't true. Like you've seen the success in the past, but the safety position is just baffling to me because when I do watch the tape, it's like the reason they're grading out so bad is, and in my opinion, Amos has played much, much better than Savage. I'm not kind of putting them in that same group, that same tier. But when they miss a play, it's like I look at that play and I go, that's on the player right there. But like you said, whose job is it to get the players ready? It's tough. Ryan, man, talk to us, dude. What do you see as the biggest issue, man?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to elaborate too much because I think JJ and I are fairly aligned on a lot of that, so he covered a lot of the points. But going back to what you were talking about, Clayton, because I do see a lot of that. You talked about being kind of too compressed, and when you're trying to do all this dink and dunk stuff, it's hard. And they even addressed that early on. I don't remember exactly what they were talking about, but the offense is getting more and more compressed, and I think that's as they're allowed to do or able to do less and less. The offensive line can't block, the receivers can't get open, whatever. The only thing I can think, just trying to think positively from a schematic standpoint, is we need to be able, and I hate to even say this because this is what Rodgers and LaFleur keep saying, and I want to smack them every time they say it, but we need to be able to stretch the field a little bit. We need to create that space intermediate, in the intermediate. And on top of that, considering all we're doing now is running and throwing behind the line of scrimmage, there's no wonder it's compressed. They know what we're going to do. We're way too predictable, first of all. I went and looked at a couple stats in terms of like 3rd and 4. There's like an 80% chance we're going to throw the ball and it's going to be behind the line of scrimmage. Like we're so unbelievably predictable with what we're doing, and it's all stupid stuff. Even like with the success running the ball, and I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad we stuck with it. That's not really super sustainable long term running that much, because how many times do we have to run a play to actually get far enough down the field if we're getting 4 or 5 yard chunks? That's really not sustainable long term. That's great that we're doing it. It's great we're successful, but that's just the first piece that we have to build on. So yeah, just strictly from a schematic standpoint, like I talked to you about, Clayton, we're paddling uphill. It's like that video I said of the guy holding his shopping cart sideways and throwing groceries in it. Like we're making this way harder than it has to be. But ultimately, yeah, it's like JJ was saying, it's at some point you got to look at this and say, I don't know what else to say other than this is a coaching issue. I really don't know, no matter what the issue is. Well, the guys aren't playing. It's kind of a coaching issue a little bit. Well, the guys aren't prepared. That's a coaching issue. Well, the guys, they're not putting in the work. Matt LaFleur's putting in the work. The guys aren't. I'm sorry. That's going to be a coaching issue. You have to get these guys ready to play one way or another. So again, as I said, it's completely unfair. If Matt LaFleur is putting in the work, he's putting together the best game plan he can, he's calling good plays and doing all these things, and the guys aren't executing, I really don't know where else to put that. I mean, it reminds me, I read it once, so I'm going to try to sound super intelligent, but the in the Sun Tzu, The Art of War or whatever,
yeah.
If a guy messes up, that guy doesn't get killed. The guy who's leading the army gets taken over to the side and decapitated. Like, that's it. And guess what? Things get cleaned up real quick. So that's where we're at right now. No, seriously though, it's if this guy messes up, it's a coaching issue. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, why, like Jay just said, why are you fumbling handoffs twice in a row? Like, come on, man. I mean, if things are that bad, if guys are unprepared to that extent, there's no question in my mind with the amount of mental errors we're making, this is guys just not having any energy. You know what I mean? I mean, when you're doing super stupid stuff, it's because your mind is just not really fully focused on it. We do that on day-to-day tasks where it's like, oops, you make some kind of stupid mistake because you're only half doing the task. The entire team has only got half-hearted effort into this thing. And again, I really like Matt LaFleur, so I hate to put it all on him, but they're not playing for you. They're not fighting for you. They're not motivated by you. They don't care. And it's really painful to see such teams like Carolina who have nothing to play for. You know, they have no reason to care whatsoever. Half that team's going to get cut, and they're fighting for these guys.
Yeah.
Somebody in that room has got to kind of pick it up. And similar to what JJ was saying before, you got to keep working up the chain. You know, I mean, if the position coach isn't getting the guys ready, the head coach has to go to the position coach and say, this is what needs to happen, and you're either going to do it or, you know, however you want to say it, you need to understand your job's on the line here because your guys aren't performing.
Yeah.
And if Matt LaFleur's not doing it, Brian Gutekunst has to make it clear to Matt LaFleur, just so you know, this is on you. You need to get this fixed. And ultimately what happened in 2018, things didn't get fixed until Mark Murphy got involved and was like, all right, you know what? Nothing's working here. And this little thing where the coaches and the GM and everybody are trying to figure this out, and we're all just sitting here doing this. Nope, we're blowing this thing up. And that's what ultimately fixed it. So I don't want to go to that extreme, but at some point, somebody's got to figure this thing out. Somebody's got to man up and say, this is the change we're going to make to fix things. Otherwise, it's on Mark Murphy to say, we got to just blow this thing up because you guys aren't getting the job done.
Absolutely. And
I agree.
it took some huevos to do that with Mark Murphy too, because you know, the fact that he went in and he basically said, here's how we've always done things to the best of my knowledge since Ron Wolf, and we're going to change things up. This ain't working. And then I remember thinking, man, this is a bold move. And I remember hearing your podcast during this time too. And sure enough, man, you come out the first year and bam, you see a change. You know, it's funny what you said about the position coaches. Brung a memory back of a really cool story. Bill Walsh 101, you know, all of Bill Walsh's players. I don't know if you've read any of his books, like the one that he used to be the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Brian Billick actually used to be the PR guy for Bill Walsh, if I remember correctly. And he helped write a book about Bill Walsh. And they said more than anything, more than X's and O's, more than a football genius, Bill Walsh was a psychologist. Like he could get in the psyche of a player and a coach so quick. And one of the tactics he always used, which Mike Holmgren took to Green Bay in his run there in the 90s, was he would intentionally roast the position coach in front of the players. I mean, absolutely, as if they were the worst coach in the league, this and that. And you can actually see a sideline shot of Mike Holmgren doing it to Andy Reid. And Andy Reid, who at the time, if I remember correctly, was either the offensive coordinator or the quarterback's coach at one point there. And he goes to Andy Reid and he chews Andy Reid out. And you can see as Holmgren walks off, Andy Reid turned around and looked at Brett, and Brett looks at him like, oh, man, he took a bullet for me there. And that makes those players want to play. But
yeah, that makes sense.
You don't have any of that right now. You don't. None of it. And not that you should use that specific tactic, and that's the secret to coaching football, but there's got to be something change. And I do think you guys know I've defended Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is having an off year, but at the same time, I personally don't think you're going to find another quarterback to play at his level that's available right now. And there's no trading him. If he comes back, you got him. I think you still got a top 10 quarterback, but there's something in that room with Aaron Rodgers' presence, with Aaron Rodgers of, come on, guys, everything's going to be okay. Let's just, it is preventing Matt LaFleur from doing the exact thing that we're talking about doing. So good stuff. All right, Mr. Thomas Austin, talk to us, man. What do you think? What's the biggest thing that stands out to you, man, as far as this Packers team? What do you see as one of the maybe 1, 2, or top 3 issues right now?
So I'm going to tackle the first one for offense. To me, it kind of feels like, and it's kind of an excuse by blaming the constant injuries, but there's no consistency there. The offensive line I don't know how many different variations we've seen throughout the years, almost every every single game, it feels like it's different. There's no synergy there. It's hard. I like to think of football as like a chess game, and you're constantly just moving the pieces around, and you're just looking at there and don't know what to do. Every single day when I come home from work, I call up my dad and we talk about the Packers. He's a big fan. He's what got me back into it. And he's very much on Rodgers' side, where he doesn't have anyone to throw it to. They're not listening to him. And me, I'm more of trust the system. If you go with the system. LaFleur, obviously, past couple of years going 13-3, 13-3, 13-4. You don't just luck into that.
Right.
The system is working. And you can kind of see certain games where it kind of feels like Rodgers and LaFleur are on the same page with it. And I believe that there's people, the talking heads all mention, like, you can tell when Rodgers calls an audible and then the play falls apart. But also, too, a lot of young guys in key positions. It's having the expectations that everything's going to run smoothly. That's wild. I'm on Twitter a lot, and I see so many people just tearing the team apart who claim to be fans, and it's like, you kind of just want to be here to trash every little thing that they do. Any positives, they take that away. And I really feel like it's just, you have to, if things are working even slightly, follow through with that. Don't move things around. But like this last weekend, Watson, the injury sucked. And a lot of people are coming at him for no reason. But those injuries, it just seems the Packers can't catch a break at all on offense. Something happens. They get drives going so well, and then just one boneheaded play, which, like you guys are talking about, that's kind of on the discipline and coaching, where a flag pops up. So what used to be a 15-yard Aaron Jones rush is now it gets called back, and that happens way too much. And I just feel like they have to figure out beforehand, okay, what happens if this piece, like I said, of chess, if the queen goes down, you switch up your game. You can see what they have. You know what they have. And you can kind of make it work, where you can turn a pawn into a different piece. And I feel like Rodgers can do that. I feel like LaFleur can do that. It's just there's no... It feels just so disjointed.
Yeah.
And then on defense, it's not as simple as just getting rid of Barry, because what are you going to do after that? You're going to get the people who have been working with him. And it just seems like for defensive coordinator, they haven't been able to hit on someone in the past few years.
The past 100 years. Go ahead, though.
And it's just, for the defense, there's not really one thing, because a lot of people have taken step backs. And throughout the years, you're going to get that just because age and everything. But these are young guys who just seemingly aren't getting it.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know exactly what to do for defense, but it's maybe like take your key players. Get your Jair, get your Rashawn, and have them kind of be the focal points for getting your team fired up, which you shouldn't have the players do it. That should be coaching. But get those guys who are playing the best to their ability, see maybe if they can come up with something. Just get the team talking, get the team together. And then finally, for the last point, it's a lot of the times what the coaches say after the games, after the press conferences, they come out and they make everything sound so easy, like, oh man, we just gotta work better at it. And they can sweet talk it. They can sweet talk it so well, but they never follow through. So if they follow through with that, if they actually listen to their own words and do that, I think that they can pull it together. A lot of people are doom and gloom on this season. 3-5, rough losses. However, there's a couple of games where key plays, if they just fall in favor, it'd be 5-3, not the greatest, but there's still hope. I think that there's still some time to turn this around. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. And I love your positivity. I like following you on Twitter. I love how you make light of situations when other people are acting like the world is ending. You know, isn't it funny that we spend whatever the off season is, whether it's you consider it 4 months or 6 months out of the year, we're just like, God, I can't wait till football season gets here. And then it gets here. And the second things don't go perfect, we're miserable, right? Everybody's just like, I'm like, this is what we were waiting on, right? This is crazy. But you said a couple of things there that I think was really profound, Thomas. You know, you were talking about find the things that are working and just do it more. It sounds so simple, right? I mean, and there's a thing in business, you talk about it, accentuate the positives and minimize the negatives. It's that simple. And you do that by, on defense, we talked about it. You know, what is it going to take to make a change at certain positions? Like, if you were to come to me and go, what's the worst case scenario for a specific position? And let's use safety, right? If you were to come to me and go, all right, what's the worst case scenario you could see at the safety position? I would be someone who can't tackle, someone who I don't really care if they play gap sound or not. If they're not going to use the physicality to stop the run, it doesn't matter how well that gap assignment is drawn up, period, right? I would also say someone who does not get you turnovers, someone who does not force fumbles and does not pick the ball off, right? Those would be the three things. Like, if you cannot tackle, if you cannot play gap sound, and if you can't force turnovers, why are you on the field? And when you look at Darnell Savage, I mean, you see it. Like, solo tackles, he's 54th in the entire league. And we know tackles don't, it doesn't. I'm not here to say, give me a Roquan Smith that's going to make 735 tackles in one season. That doesn't fix the problem. But he has 21 tackles this year, 21 solo tackles. And the thing that kills me is 46.4 PFF grade, 52.1 defense grade. His pass rush is decent. Maybe we should move Rashawn Gary to free safety and let Darnell Savage rush off the edge. I don't know. But the coverage grade, 45.2. Guys, there is nothing this guy is doing well. Nothing. And you've got the largest sample size possible. I mean, I'm sitting back going, what is it going to take to pull him? What would it take? And to me, kind of like, to bring this full circle, and we talked about, like Mark Murphy used the word silos back in the day. You had too many silos that were preventing communication between Ted and Mike and, way back in the day. For me, it seems like people are scared to go to Goody and go, hey, man, I think we missed on this guy. I don't think we should play him. Because that's what it's going to take. I firmly believe if you pull Savage and you throw Rudy Ford in there, you're going to see that defense improve. I'm not saying it's going to turn into a top 5 defense magically like all the beat writers said in the preseason and training camp, right? But you get him out of the lineup. I would leave Amos in place right now, and I would do a little bit different rotation on the defensive line. TJ Slayton is not working out. He's not. I don't care how big the guy is. I don't care. He can be a mountain of a man, and you can try to force him into that nose tackle role. And it's becoming evident now, Ryan, that in the offseason when we seen Kenny Clark come in and he was trimmed down, this was the plan. They wanted to play him on Rashawn Gary's side more often to force a mismatch on that side of the ball, on that side of the line of scrimmage, that there's no way they can double both Kenny and Rashawn Gary. And it's obvious they wanted him to key in on pass rush. And it's because they thought TJ Slayton was going to be that traditional nose tackle that they could use. And TJ Slayton's grade, guys, 53.4. His tackle grade is a 25.6. It doesn't matter how much you look like Gilbert Brown. If you cannot tackle a ball carrier, you're doing us no good. I mean, once a team realizes all he's going to do is try to occupy 2 gaps. And according to the run defense grade of 56.2, he's not even doing that well. He's not going to tackle you. Heck, gash him in the A gap. Just hit him right up in the A gap, right? And it's because you've got him in the game more often now. I mean, he's had a total of 150 snaps. This isn't a small sample size. So what I think would really fix this issue on defense, or at least get us in the right direction, like what you were saying, Thomas, is put that defensive line, put that front out there of Kenny, Reed, and Lowry. If you want to continue to play Kenny at more of a defensive end position and put Reed at nose and try that, that's great, whatever. But to me, and I'm not saying this is a great combination, but TJ Slayton is becoming an issue against the run, period. So is it going to knock Kenny's pass rush down, I'm sure, just a touch as you make those adjustments. But, like we said the other day and we laughed about, situations are situational. We're in a position now where teams are just going, you know what? We're just going to run the ball on them. Just pound the freaking rock, get a lead, and they don't have the firepower to come back. And it's kind of like what your dad was talking about. You said, Thomas, that he sides with Aaron. That's the one thing that's not talked about enough, in my opinion, this week. And maybe you guys disagree, but I looked up and I'm like, nobody is talking about the fact that we were without our top 3 receivers. Like, when I say top 3 receivers, I'm not talking about a true number 1 receiver. Like, they're not in that. We were without our top 3 receivers on the depth chart. We lost both of our inside linebackers, and we still somehow only lost by 10 points. But I do believe if the Buffalo Bills had continued to run a rock in the second half, that game would have gotten really, really ugly. Because once they started throwing it around a yard and, forcing turnovers and all that, things really changed up. So to fix the problem, in my opinion, we've got to open things up a bit. And that doesn't mean pass more. It just simply means open the formations up a touch, stretch the defense horizontally pre-snap rather than trying to do it post-snap with all this. And you don't see as much movement, which I completely agree with you, Ryan, that it's like there's so many mistakes. Not that you're saying it's because of the mistakes, but I think we would all agree you're not seeing as much pre-snap motion. I think it's because, there's so many things that can go wrong and there's so many mental mistakes you can't do it. You almost have to spread it out a touch and continue to run the ball, but make that defense get out of that real tight shell that they're playing in on offense. I think that's going to clean up some of the problems on offense. Now on defense, again, make the change. I mentioned in the chat what I would love to see them do. I think I mentioned on the pod the other day too, is I'd love to see them lock Rudy Ford up. It ain't going to take much money at all. Get him to an extension, 2 or 3 years, play him at safety. And whether he's the answer or not, by the end of this season, we better know if he can play safety or not. And if he can't, that better be a focal point because it is destroying this defense, like absolutely destroying it. When you lose the turnover, when you can't win the turnover differential battle on a consistent basis, you're not going to win many games, period. And you've got a quarterback that's protecting the football. You do. That's one thing that Rodgers does great. We would all agree, sometimes to a fault, right? But again, even when, like, look at the touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs. And I'm going to pass it back off to you, JJ, but the touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs, they were in a single high man coverage. Okay. Now I'm not going to try to bore you too much with the X's and O's, but single high man coverage, 2 receivers on the right side of the field. They ran a dagger concept. That dagger concept is simply what a dagger is a streak or a 9 route with an underneath dig. Okay. And the idea is get the defense stretched vertically. And if they follow the receiver deep, then you can attack underneath. It's a man coverage beater. But like Ryan said on the pod, it was a 50-50 ball. There was pretty decent coverage. It's just Rodgers threw an absolutely perfect ball. Romeo Doubs did 2 360s looking like Sonic the Hedgehog out there and somehow made the catch. It made it look way more difficult than it should have.
Yep.
Again, that play, when he caught it, I thought, man, that's a dot from Rodgers. Heck of a catch by Romeo Doubs. But I didn't look at that and go, what a play call. I was going, man, that's a 50-50 ball. Like,
right.
It's a dagger concept. Where, like I said, where are the smash concepts? Where are the double crossers? Where are the mesh plays? Where are the drive concepts? All these things that's going to separate the defense at layers. And I think the answer, and a lot of people probably don't want to hear it, but me personally, I believe the answer is you can't run a drive concept consistently out of these tight formations. It's almost impossible. Same thing with, with the mesh. Yeah, you can run it with a couple tight ends. You can run a little mesh play there, or maybe a combo mesh with a strong side tight end and a play side receiver. There, different things there. But I just miss the days of, hey, every now and again, let's come out in a spread 11 and pound the rock in the A-gap. But we're trying to get so cute with the pulling guards and this and that. And Aaron Jones, I'm telling you right now, if Aaron Jones isn't our running back, we don't have the rushing success that we had that last game because he is making chicken salad out of you know what. So go ahead, JJ. How do you fix it, man? Fix the problem for us.
I'm going to keep mine.
Howdy, dude. Are you going in? You're like, listen, change the locks, get them all out of here.
I'm going to keep mine kind of short because I'm a little bit of a downer. I'm not super interested in the pursuit of a Super Bowl in 2022. I don't think it's happening. That it's just too plain to me. I have a lot of ideas for how I'd like to fix things going forward into next year. And one of my biggest priorities would be talking to Matt LaFleur and saying, I want to see how you are preparing this team to be successful next year. I want to see development of young guys. I want to see, build. Let me back up. One thing that is really frustrating about when we do see success this year is we're not building anything at all. All right. Like 2 weeks ago, the safeties suddenly had an elite game, both of them out of nowhere. First game all year where we had good safety play. And I said on the podcast, I hope we see that continue. I hope it's not just a flash in the pan, like kind of everything else that works right. Hey, look, the offensive line worked great for 1 week, and then the next week they fall apart again. The safeties look great last week, then this week fall apart again. I need to see areas of the team start stacking success. I need to see a plan from Matt LaFleur about how the locker room and the coaching staff are going to be better next year than they are this year. And I'm going to point to a bunch of crappy teams over the last few years who have turned things around and finished the season hot and strong and be able to build off of that in the next year. I think back to the 2019 Dolphins. I think it was 2019, where people were really upset about how bad the Dolphins were because it was kind of damaging fantasy football because opposing defenses in fantasy football were putting up like 35 points whenever they went up against the Dolphins. And so, it's like, hey, great. You can get, the highest score of any player in fantasy football is just going to come every week from whatever defense is going up against the Dolphins. People were mad about that. And the Dolphins started selling off parts and firing people. And all of a sudden they started winning games. And that was not like the goal of selling off parts. The goal was prepare for next year.
Right.
But the thing is, the guys lower on the depth chart, those are NFL players too, and they want to win. And you know what? You get some of these divas out of the locker room, you start getting better results. I'm looking at some of the guys we got on our roster who are getting paid big bucks, who have big names and big egos and putting out crap on the field, and I don't know what the benefit of having them out there is, other than you don't have to face the music of fans being mad that you moved on from so-and-so who's not playing like so-and-so. And so, what would I do to fix the rest of the season? We're a little late for that. But most of my ideas are past date now because the trade deadline is gone, and there are guys I would have moved on from. I think there are specific guys on this roster you could have moved on from that. I don't think it really would have hurt our 2022 season much more than it currently is set up, and would have prepared you a lot better for the future. But for trying to win some games for the rest of the 2022 season, because I don't think the rest of the NFL is so bad, we're not going to have a really great draft pick. So let's win as many games as we can and try and build on the locker room, improve the locker room, get these young guys who are going to be the foundation of our team next year, really believing in themselves, get the fans juiced up. If you get hot at the end and people are excited because, you might sneak into the playoffs, you might, if you run the table toward the end and sneak in as a wild card, maybe win a playoff game or two, whatever. I mean, that's not nothing. I think that is worth pursuing. To achieve that, I'm going to make practice all about some fundamentals, and we're going to start with tackling. So I'm going to read off some names to you here of guys who are the lowest graded tacklers on our team. Jaron Reed, Rasul Douglas, Adrian Amos, Eric Stokes, Devondre Campbell, Jair Alexander, Rashawn Gary, Darnell Savage, Preston Smith, TJ Slayton, and Ladarius Hamilton. There's some big names in there that should not be horrible tacklers. Rashawn Gary has a 42 tackling grade. I think we can all acknowledge Rashawn Gary is a great player and should not have a 42 tackling grade.
Right. So
guess what? In practice this week, we are going to practice tackling. We're going to practice, and we've seen it. You look back at the Tampa game, all right, and Matt LaFleur really put him through their paces, had these really physical practices that ended up in a bunch of soft tissue injuries. And it freaked him out, and he came out and publicly apologized for it and kind of said, we're not going to do that anymore. And guess what? The team has not – I'm not sure they've made a tackle since then.
Yeah.
And the run defense has been horrific, despite the fact that we had really good run defense and really good tackling in that game. And that Buccaneers game, despite the fact that the offense completely fell apart and couldn't do anything, that game was like the last time that I felt encouraged about the direction of the team, because I'm saying, look, we kind of laid 2 stinkers to start the season, but that's fine. Week 3, I'm seeing a lot of positives that we can build off of. But again, there's never anything we can build off of from week to week, because whatever you do good one week, it's going to fall apart the next week, and somebody else is going to be good instead. And you can't, build any sustained success moving forward doing that. So if I was Mark Murphy, I would also be having a conversation, with Matt LaFleur, a conversation with Brian Gutekunst, talking about, is Matt LaFleur the answer for next year? We have seen the 2022 Packers before. We've seen him for 2 games in 2019. We saw him for a couple games in 2020. We saw him for way too many games in 2021. When the team shows up unprepared, and it's humiliating. And you all know exactly which games I'm talking about. I don't even have to tell you the opponents. It's one of those games. We've seen it before. Now we're just getting the whole season of guys aren't prepared, guys are distracted, guys don't care, and they're not executing the fundamentals of tackling and blocking and actually doing your job on a given play and throwing to the open guy. And it's everything all at once. And I do blame Matt LaFleur for it. I like Matt LaFleur. I want to see him turn this around and find success. But he has to earn that. I'm not just going to give it to him just because he's won 36 games in the last 3 years, which, hooray, fantastic. I think he did a really good job for those first 3 years. He's not doing a good job this year. And the NFL is a results driven business. And Clayton, you were talking about Doug Peterson. I wanted Doug Peterson fired at least a year before he actually got fired by the Eagles, because I looked at what was going on there and I said, it's not working. It is a problem from the top down. I don't like his decision making. I don't particularly love his scheme. They held on to him way too long because he had won a Super Bowl. And you can't, in the NFL, you can't keep giving guys so much respect because of what they've done a few years ago. It is about how you're doing your job right now. So if you're Matt LaFleur, and I'm Mark Murphy, you have to convince me of why you're going to do a good job for the rest of this season and put us in a place to be a success next season. And it's not all his fault. I think that Gutekunst did put together a more flawed roster than he could have. I think there are problems that he should have that he should have addressed before the season that he didn't. But Matt LaFleur is underutilizing the talent that he does have, and so that is a problem to me. I had one more thing, but I forgot it, so I'm going to let Ryan take his.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
This is so hard because so many points have been made in the last 45 minutes that I wanted to touch on, but we're so far away from that at this point. So I guess I'll try to touch on the most recent, because that otherwise it absolutely makes no sense. The first thing that would come out of my mouth. I keep going back to 2018, and one of the biggest issues I think is like JJ was saying, guys are getting too comfortable. I think our head coach was way too comfortable in his position. Nobody was ever going to move on from Mike McCarthy because of what he had accomplished. Dom Capers, he was on our team 4 or 5 years longer than he should have been. That guy should have been fired a long time ago. But it was also the players. Clay Matthews and Nick Perry were the poster children in my mind for guys that had no business being on the team, but had no fear of ever being cut from the team.
Yeah,
they were never going to be let go. They had no position coach. They did whatever they wanted. They put no effort out. Nick Perry stole. He just robbed us blind. We paid him a massive amount of money. That guy was the worst edge rusher in football after we paid him money. So there is an issue with feeling too comfortable on this team. And there does need to be an element of, if you're not going to get the job done, we'll find somebody who will. But again, we're not going to do that. Like we've all been talking about with Darnell Savage. And the guys that will show up are the guys like Rudy Ford, because they just want a chance. That's why we're starting to see, while some guys are not getting it done, where it's like, why, what's going on with Amos? What's going on with Seth? What's going on with all these guys that should be, even Kenny at this point? You talked about Slayton and how bad his run defense grade is. You know who the only player on this team with the worst run defense grade is? It's Kenny Clark. So there's a lot of guys where it's like, what the heck is going on here? But you know who's starting to pick it up? We're starting to see stuff from Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, Samori Toure. These guys are like, just give me a chance. Rudy Ford is one of the highest graded defensive. I know it's a small sample size, but the guy is doing everything he possibly can to say, please just give me a chance. And we got guys that look like they don't care. Why? Because I'm freaking Darnell Savage, dude. Do you know who I am? I'm a first-round pick. Like I don't need. I have athleticism for days. I don't need to put in the work. I'm a stud.
Yep.
So there does need to be, and from the players to the coaches to everybody, a healthy dose of, and fans do this too. When I even discuss the possibility that maybe our head coach, his seat might be getting a little warm. How dare you? The guy's won 13 games for how. This is the problem. We can't get in a situation where you've been good in the past, so we can't even discuss it for 2, 3, 4 years, because we're in a lot of trouble. I'm not saying fire the guy today, but everybody needs to understand this is a business where you either produce or you're gone. And it can happen like that, because way too many teams will hold on to a GM, a head coach, a player, a quarterback. How many times did the Jets hold on to a garbage quarterback for 4 or 5 years, go get a new one, hold on for 4 or 5 years? You have to be willing to admit this was a mistake. We got to figure something else out. And if you're not willing to do that, you're just going to continue a downward spiral, and this is never going to get fixed. And kind of going back to another point you made before about tackling, I do think that's a big issue in terms of wanting to be too careful with things. If nothing else, right now, we need to be in all-in mode. We need to be willing to say, you know what, we're not doing it. We're going to play hard and physical. And if a guy gets hurt, oh, well, sorry. Same with like Coach Hahn said about special teams. The concern is, well, what if somebody gets hurt? You know what? I don't care. We're here to win football games. We're here to play. And you're going to go all out. You're going to play special teams. We're going to play hard, fast, physical practice. You're going to be dead tired. And you know what? We might lose a couple guys in practice. I don't care. Because if I may be not politically correct for a moment, this is a man sport. And you have to be hard. You need to be physical. You need to be tough. It's like I watched the Deadliest Catch where these guys they got limbs falling off and they're going back out and they're going back to work. That needs to be what football is. And you need to be willing to do that. If you're going to get hurt, you're going to get banged up, and I'm going to be the one that imposes that on you. I'm going to kill you in practice. And if you survive, then you get the right to play on Sunday. We don't have that mentality anymore. And granted, most teams don't. But like JJ said, there's a direct correlation. The second you take your hand off and go, I don't want to get him hurt. I don't want to stress him too much. When you win, you get the day off on Monday. This is so stupid. No, you don't. You don't get days off. You don't get minutes off. You don't get hours off. And if I find out after practice you go home and you're playing video games, then I'll find somebody else that actually gives a crap and wants to play football, and they can play for this team. This is the NFL. Right. This is the peak. This is the pinnacle. Everybody in the world wants to be able to do this, and only a select few can, and you're not even going to put in a little bit of effort. But again, guys are too comfortable or too concerned. I mean, and Matt LaFleur is going to be on the hot seat or get crucified if God forbid somebody gets hurt in practice. So he's got to be careful, and he's apologizing. This is stupid. This is stupid. You have to embrace this. Go ahead. You saying something?
End of rant. No, go ahead. You got something else?
Well, there's a couple like older things that I probably should let go, but I don't know if the one thing I think Clayton was talking about it a little bit, but you know how our defense kind of keeps, eventually they give up a big play, right? And Joe Barry even talked about that, where good play, and then they kind of give up a big run for 40 yards or something like that. I just thought it was kind of funny because we used to play defense, or still do, I guess, that whole bend, don't break model. And the point is just keep them in these short plays, and eventually we're going to get a big play. They're bend, don't breaking our defense. Just keep playing, and eventually they're going to mess up. Just keep moving the chains. It's like, How crazy is that? That's what offenses are doing. They're forcing us into bend, don't break, because eventually we're going to break. That's freaking pathetic. So, anyways, I'll leave it at that because I got a couple others, but that was talked about so long ago, it's not even relevant.
No, that's a great point, though. It is, and we've got a chat here. I know I'm going to butcher the name. JJ, you're the smart one in the group. How would you pronounce that name?
Enos Lab.
All right, there you go. It says problem is we're discussing halfway through a season after losing a large handful of solid veterans and one superstar. Injuries have been an issue. And I will say this, I'm going on the record. I went on the record on my pod the other day. In the offseason, I said, I am not worried about losing Davante Adams because so many times we've seen Aaron and Davante go off script. So many times. And I was like, I want to see the concepts unfold. I want to see everything develop. I want to see this system in work with other options available, right? And I don't want to say I'm wrong because I still feel that way conceptually, right? But I will say I was really, really wrong with how much we would miss Davante Adams because there are so many times last year when you go back and watch the tape from last year where it was literally, and Rodgers said it, and Matt LaFleur said Davante's earned the right to do that, to just go off cuff and go, okay, I'm going to read the DB here and run whatever route I want, and Aaron's just going to lock on to me and throw a BB, right? And the problem is when you face a good defense and you play that bracket coverage and double team them, they take them away in the playoffs in the most important game of the season, and all you're doing is keying in on that guy, you're screwed, right? And that's exactly what happened. But I very, very, very much so underestimated the value of Davante Adams. I did. And it's making me go back and renegotiate with myself and go, okay, do you really see that wide receiver position as a third tier position rather than a second tier? But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, but I'm looking at it from the angle of I felt last year as you're watching the games, I felt that I didn't think our offense was very good, and it seemed like Davante was kind of saving everything. I didn't look at it and say, well, that means we need to keep Davante. I looked at it and said, let's fix the problem and make the rest of the offense actually work. Yeah. I was not overly thrilled with Rodgers' play last year. I thought it was fine. He did win an MVP. I didn't think that was quite right, but the offense I didn't think worked except for the Aaron to Davante connection, and I'm not sure that if we had Davante right now, that the Aaron to Davante connection would be working because it didn't work against the 49ers. 49ers really keyed in on just taking him away, and the rest of the offense couldn't get it done. I don't have any reason to think that we would still be finding success because by the end of last season, defenses had figured out how to take that away from us. Yeah. So the other reason why I wanted to take the mic is because I remember what I was going to say, which was I have a frustration with Matt LaFleur's coaching hires. We have some very good coaches on our staff, but I think a lot of them are from his still holdovers from his initial coaching staff. And he has made some good hires here and there, but too many bad hires. And I would, going forward, if he's going to stay, I would need to see a change in how these hires are being made. So I'm looking at like Sean Menenga, Mo Drayton, Joe Barry, I don't think are okay hires. And I need to see a change from the organization in how they approach these hires to where, look, Mark Murphy seems to be really good at hiring coaches and understanding, how to find these guys. He went out and found Matt LaFleur. Can we pick Mark Murphy's brain about how we find an offensive coordinator? I just would be curious to see what ideas he would bring to the table. So, but again, this is all for next year. Yes, I think there is some value for this locker room in taking some sustained success at the end of this season into next season, but I'm just not interested in being the Saints, getting worse and worse every year and just trying to hold on to these last, dying breaths of a Hall of Fame quarterback's career, and just continuing to go all in every single year here. At some point, you need to pump the brakes and do a reset and fix your cap situation. So you look, yeah, you can do what the Broncos did with Peyton Manning and build a super team around an old quarterback who still has all the head knowledge, and you go out and win it. You can do that, but that requires a reset in there somewhere that the Saints never took, and the Packers seem to be unwilling to take. And I'm just looking at where we're at in the season right now with our win-loss record. Like, now was the time to just say, all right, we did try. We tried our hardest. It's not quite working. So let's go with plan B of let's do our little reset right now so that 2023 we can go out there and really push all our chips in.
Gotcha. Good stuff. Yeah, you pointed out, it's funny. And we're going to wrap this thing up soon. And I'm going to hear from you here in just a second, Thomas, and we'll wrap it up. But everybody looks at Mark Murphy as the funny-looking old guy on the inner tube. And they like to gloss over the fact that the guy played in the NFL, led the league in interceptions one year, and is a football guy, period. Mm-hmm. And 2025 is coming like a freight train. And Mark Murphy is going to be gone. Who's going to step into that role? There's so many questions. And that's why it's like, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I agree with everybody's take. And I think that's what's great about these roundtables is because it opens your eyes up. Man, I really didn't look at that angle. But when we step into this new regime, if you will, when we hire the new person in 2025 to replace Mark Murphy, I think that's going to be when this overhaul takes place that you're talking about, JJ. If we're not seeing results by then, and it sounds like it's a lifetime away, I know, but it's like, would Mark Murphy tear it all down and go, okay, guys, have at it, I'm gone? History to me says they probably won't do that. Now, as far as the players that we could have potentially traded away, for me personally, you can't trade Aaron Rodgers. That's impossible. It was a 3-year commitment to Aaron, and if you trade him away, the cap penalty is unbearable. The contract is structured in a way so that when Aaron decides to retire at the end of this year or the end of next year, it's something that is manageable. I think it would put like $14 million against the cap. He's on $14 million against the cap if he retires after this year on next year's books, which isn't crazy. And then I think it jumps to 24 the following year, and then we're clean off the books, if I understand correctly. And again, we won't get into the conversation. Nobody really knows the optional aspect of that contract. But Aaron's a top 10 quarterback. We can't trade him. I heard some people say trade Aaron Jones because that is going to free up roughly $10 million next year, right? The only problem is Aaron Jones is your best player on your roster. So to me, it's like, okay, if we scrap Aaron Jones, we have no weapons on offense whatsoever, in my opinion. So you truly are going right back to Aaron. It's going to be an Aaron Rodgers-led team and nobody else on offense. Bakhtiari's going to walk away soon too. I think we're going to see this. I guess what I'm saying, in short, we're going to see the same type of approach next year, just the way the cap sits. And it's probably going to be 2024 when we see the overhaul you're talking about. You disagree with that, Ryan, before we move on to Thomas?
To me, it comes down to what Rodgers wants to do. I don't know if he wants to come back to this. I know he has to forfeit a bunch of money, so maybe he's just going to do it all for the money. But just his demeanor, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, it is a lot of money, but he strikes me as a guy that really doesn't necessarily want to do all this just for money. He's got plenty of money to live on, and if this is the way things are going to go, again, what does he have to look forward to? If we win 8 games this year, why are you coming back?
Right.
It would literally just be to get a paycheck because you're tarnishing your record. You are coming back and dealing with all the media scrutiny and hearing everybody say you're washed up and all this stuff. You need the money that bad to come back and do this all over again? I don't think so. So unless we end by at least sneaking into the playoffs, I don't see any reason why he would come back. I just don't. So we'll see. That is going to be a big piece of this because, like you said, if he decides to come back, then it's like, okay, do we really want to get rid of Aaron Jones, or are we going to continue on with this path because it feels like we have no choice but to continue on this horrible, let's keep pushing money out, destroying our cap, not acquiring new players path that we're on. If he leaves, then to your point about Aaron Jones, he's our best player. Okay, well, I don't care because Rodgers is gone. We're kind of blowing this thing up anyways. I don't need Aaron Jones to get 8 carries running into a brick wall all the time. Just it's going to suck. There's no doubt. But yeah, that's the whole point. We're going to suck for a little bit, but we got to do the hard stuff now, clean up the cap so we can come back stronger on the other end. But again, Rodgers is the biggest key. Is he leaving or not?
Right. Yeah. And for me,
Clayton, I like your logic to how I think you're correct about what probably will happen. I think your read is spot on right there. I'm just saying I don't think that's what should happen. I don't think the Packers should do that. Yeah. And I look at the Aaron Jones thing and you're saying, well, he's the best player on our offense. Our offense is not good, man. Like, yeah, he's the best player, but I think you could have gotten a first-round pick for Aaron Jones. They got the equivalent of a first-round pick for Christian McCaffrey. I think you get very, very similar compensation for Aaron Jones, a guy who, if you look at his contract and his age, it's really hard to justify him being here next year. So if it's a dude who's going to be gone next year, especially if Aaron Rodgers leaves, and you get a first-round pick for him, I don't look at our middling offense where we're underutilizing Aaron Jones anyways and say, yeah, that's worth a first-round pick. Like if we didn't have all that, would you give up a first-round pick? Or you know what? Let's just say a second-round pick in case I'm being too optimistic. Would you give up a second-round pick to go from where we'd be without him to where we are right now? To me, it's like the returns are not enough for that.
Yeah, we'd go from without Aaron Rodgers, a 3-win team to a 5-win team with Aaron Jones. That's not worth whatever compensation we get. And again, cleaning up the cap situation.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. This feels totally different from, and I was at Lambeau before Aaron's first start. This feels totally different from that point. At that point, this is a decent roster. I think they can make this work with a young quarterback. I mean, not going to quite be like, it was with Brett going to the playoffs. And obviously the first year it wasn't. I think they won, 6 games, if I remember right. But at the end of the day, man, it's like, I don't know, dude. It sucks that this is how Aaron's going out. But if you're doing a rebuild, the number one step, the very first thing you got to do is find a quarterback if you're going to win in this league. We got to find that quarterback. We tried to draft him. We don't know if it is the guy, right? But if Jordan Love isn't the guy, people don't want to hear this, but first round this year, might want to try to get it right and find the guy.
or to be honest, or not. You know what I mean? I mean, I know everybody's like, well, we have to be good next year. No, we don't. The Lions are doing the right thing. I know they still suck, but at least the mentality is right. Let's fortify what we have. Let's make sure the offensive line is right. Let's make sure our defense is kind of in a good spot. We don't need to rush and go out and get a bad quarterback. Like I said, I did a cursory look at the quarter. I'm not a big fan of the quarterbacks that are coming out this next year. And so we don't need to rush out and trade away all our draft capital to go up and get some halfway decent whatever. You know what? If we don't have the quarterback even if we know Jordan Love is bad, let's get the offensive line figured out. Let's go get a wide receiver stud, whatever it is that you got. Let's go get a real good safety. So what? We're bad. Okay. We're going to build this team. We're going to keep getting better. And when that opportunity comes, we're going to get the quarterback. We're going to drop him in, and then we're off and running. We don't need to rush it. If it takes 2-3 years to get everything set and get a quarterback, then fine. But I don't see it as if Rodgers leaves, everything else, nothing else matters. We have to get a quarterback. I mean, if we can, we can, but there's probably not an option in terms of free agency or the draft. And if that's the case, then so be it. That's just where I'm at with it. I'm willing to embrace the suck because I just think it has to happen. And I acknowledge that it's probably going to be bad, but I also acknowledge I still think it's the right thing to do. Yeah. So that's just kind of where I'm at.
Right. And what I was trying to say is the number one priority is finding the right quarterback. Like you said,
right.
I look at this draft class and I want to like Will Levis because I'm a Kentucky fan.
Yeah.
But I don't see any of these quarterbacks as, yep, that's the Andrew Luck,
right.
That's the Peyton Manning, the Aaron Rodgers, the whoever. Which it's funny though, we do forget that nobody was looking at it like Aaron Rodgers is a slam dunk,
Yeah.
So you just gotta, here you go, trust the process, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, man, I don't know, dude. I'm holding out some optimism. When you look at the standings, Thomas, we're going to you right now, brother. Basically, you've got Philly, Minnesota, Seattle, and Atlanta. Those are your division leaders. And for the three spots outside of that, you've got Dallas at 6-2, New York Giants at 6-2, and then it's up in the air. So that 7th spot is our only shot, just being realistic. 49ers at 4-4, Commanders at 4-4, Rams at 3-4, Buccaneers at 3-5, Packers at 3-5, Cardinals at 3-5. I mean, you've literally got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's an 8-team race there. Thomas, tell me, we come out and we boat race the Lions tomorrow, right? We win by 35 points. Is there a chance that we turn this thing around, man?
So I'm going to go ahead and be the positive here to the other two negatives we got.
Clayton.
Yeah.
So I'm what you may call delusional, but I believe that the Packers have the ability to turn it around. What we've all been saying is that they have talent. They have the talent on defense. The young guys are looking to be pretty good on offense, which is hit or miss here and there. But I was thinking when talking about how tight the offense play, well, I think the reason for it, I'm just thinking about it, is with all the injuries to like the three main guys and kind of, you got Sammy and Randall, two older guys who have a little history with injuries. You got a bunch of these newer guys who you're trying to get into the system. Keeping them together kind of makes sense. You're not asking them to do a whole lot. You can kind of keep them at like very short routes and try to do the best that you can. And I think a good way to try and fix them is to, and this falls on Rodgers because my mic had to be muted because one thing that Rodgers and my 2-year-old daughter have in common is when you tell them no, they get a little upset. And Rodgers, talking about a rebuild, if you're going to do a rebuild, you should have just went with Love. And hard to say because look what he did afterwards, but getting rid of Rodgers, if you were wanting to rebuild, that was the time to do it. Now you're in cap HE double hockey sticks for the foreseeable future. You got a bunch of guys who you paid money to, and it's I think if you can just get people on board with the fact that you beat the Bears, you beat Brady, and you beat Belichick. Now, with that being said, the Buccaneers and the Patriots, they're not looking so hot this year. But those wins, a little rough, but you got it. You lost to the Jets, you lost to the Giants. Those two teams are looking to be pretty decent this year, surprisingly enough. Go New York, whatever.
People don't want to hear that, but it's true.
And that's the thing is, like, people, I'm on Twitter a lot, like I said earlier, and I will play the role of a delusional fan who's like, no, this you're getting the kinks worked out, and for the first couple games of the year, you're figuring out what doesn't work, what does work. The last game with the Bills, in the second half, you're getting the run game going, and everybody is like, well, the Bills, they were up. They weren't playing their whole stuff out. And it's like, okay, if they're not, the Packers are still showing that they have fight in them. They're building that dog in them, And so a lot of fans, I'm like, how can I just lost train of thought, but I think that a fix is to trust the people that you have, understand their strengths. You worked with them during the off season, during practice and everything. You know what you have. You're still trying to figure things out. So with LaFleur, get a little creative. I know that with Watson coming in and out, you kind of have like game plans with them. You get the sweeps that work with him. Mm-hmm. Maybe try Amari Rodgers a little more in that spot. You're 3-5. Get wild with it. Get crazy.
I agree.
Right.
Quit being so, I don't know,
Safe.
stubborn with your play calling.
Safe, yeah.
The rush, hey, sometimes it doesn't work. That's the game. You got to keep doing it. If you can build on it, you got two people who, one, he loves the team. He loves what he does. He goes out there and he puts in the effort. Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon, I don't know what happened from the past couple of years, but there's still, when he gets going, that man's a freight train. You need 2-3 guys on him to bring him down. Get something to fire him up. Tell him, hey, we got someone to hack into your gaming accounts, and you ain't getting it back unless you produce here. And then, the wide receivers, Dobbs, he's showing that you hear constantly he's putting in the work. Yes, he has little issues with catching every once in a while, but that's the game sometimes. You got to work with what you have. Rodgers has to stop keying in on a person. You got to tell him, hey, what do you have to lose here? You're already throwing more interceptions this year than you have the past 3. Hyperbole, but have fun with it. Find the love for the game. That's probably one of the big things is, like you guys said, a lot of these guys, older guys, they got money. And what happens when you give players money is you see a pretty decent drop-off. But you got these young guys, and you got other teams that have the old guys on there, and they're fired up. And obviously, one thing to fix the team is fire Goody. Obviously, that's the best thing to do. He doesn't know what he's doing out there.
He rolled his eyes for everybody on the pod. He rolled his eyes. I want for the record.
I rolled my eyes.
If Goody would stop giving up these big runs and dropping passes, I think that would help everybody.
Exactly. He's on the field. He's throwing it all away. But he does what he does. And he's done a good job getting everything going. Now it's time for the players to step up. It's time for the coaches to step up. And I believe they can. I don't know what you have to get the fire in them, but there is stuff there. You have the talent. Torrey coming out there, making his adjustment for that touchdown. And Rodgers, I believe I heard people saying on the sidelines that he said, see, that's what I'm talking about. Maybe trust the young guys a little bit. Rodgers, he gets so, whenever something goes wrong, he's just arms in the air, but he is a top 10 quarterback. He's playing the stats somehow. I looked at it. The stats are in his favor a little bit, but he has to be okay, hey, we're going to try it again. They won't expect it because the moment that something goes wrong, the Packers seem to fold their cards. It's okay, well, this drive's dead. We couldn't get any yards on the first down. There's 2 more downs. There's 2 more. You can do it. I believe in him. And also, yeah, with Rodgers' thumb right now, coming in, taped up, I think that would have been a fine. Tell him to sit, rest it up, put in love, see what we can do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can
Same thing with Elton's ankle and knee.
Yep.
And you can save the whole ego thing of we're not benching you because we don't think you're good. We're benching you because we want you, we're going to have some training wheels for love here. And like I said earlier with my dad, me and him on the phone constantly, he's I don't think Love is it. I just don't think he's good. And I'm you've only seen him for 6 quarters, essentially.
Right.
And
right.
he's well, yeah, but those 6 quarters, one pass from beating the Chiefs.
Yeah.
1 pass away.
Right.
And I don't think people give him enough credit for coming in because, once again, the beginning of the year, Vikings came in, wrecked. And then he comes in that last, and he's getting things going. He's seeing different things. He's trying to make it work. And like I said, it's maybe find, Rodgers' drug dealer and take his ayahuasca away. Tell him you ain't getting him back unless you do it.
It'll be waiting. It'll be waiting on you in the back of the end zone, man, right back here.
Listen, after every positive game that you get a win, we'll look the other way. And but 3-5, and what is anyone know what the schedule looks like after the Lions? Because I was looking at it the other day, and there's a couple of tough games, but you got the Lions twice. They have heart. They're going out there. They're trying, and that counts for something. They will be a tough thing. I'm not going in tomorrow thinking it's going to be a cakewalk. But you got them twice. You got the Bears again. So you got what? 3 wins right there, and then they play the Eagles and Cowboys, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And also, Cowboys, they're a bit of an iffy team at times. You can catch them on a bad day. I think that could be a potential trap game. And then I know that the Titans are coming up too, and I think that could be a potential win too. Because I know JJ was following my little stream of consciousness yesterday, putting my thoughts on the teams on Twitter, which I still need to get to and finish. But I think the Titans, they're quietly a good team, but at the same time, they're quietly a good team. You're not seeing the big splash plays that these other people are known for. I think that you find out where the heart is of your team. You put it out there. You need some sort of rah-rah guy. Just figure out who that is. Get them fired up. Because energy, and I know this from my workplaces, when you get a person who is putting in the work and also like externally showing that, it fills people up. You get like, heck yeah, I'll die for this guy right here. You're not getting a whole lot of that feeling with this team. And that's a mixture of the young guys, the old guys. You got to find some sort of connection there. And my thoughts for maybe changing it in the future, maybe, LaFleur isn't a head coach guy, but maybe keep him on for an offensive coordinator because he comes from that tree that was working. Maybe not so much now, but he knows how to work it. Maybe he's just spread so thin with the way that the defensive is not coming together, the defensive players and the coordinator. He doesn't necessarily strike me as a person who's tough on people. Right. It's like, oh, we had a bad game. Here's a lollipop for you. It's okay. And that could work for some people. Stop coddling them. Turn these guys who everyone thinks is soft, because you hear the press conferences of the other coaches come out and saying, hey, we punch them in the face, they fold.
Yeah. Maybe,
crazy thought, which if anyone listens to, Packernet After Dark, that After Dark, that's all I'm full of. Put them in the octagon with someone. Toughen them up a little bit.
Tell them, hey, octagon out to the Don Hudson Center. I like it, dude. Now you make great points, man. You really do. The thing for me, like you talked about, and we're going to wrap this up. We are way over time, but appreciate you guys hanging out with us and those of you listening on the pod. But you kind of lost the rah-rah guy in Hackett, right? You lost your passing game coordinator in Getsy, and everything it's literally. Everything's been plucked from. You lost your number one receiver. You lost a ton of coaches. Zadarius goes to the division rival. Like, I think some of that stuff we kind of forgot about, not to make excuses, but I'm excited to see how everything unfolds. And like we always say, we'll be right here as it does unfold, and we'll still be Packer fans. But I'm of the opinion I'm just too darn stubborn, man. Get it together, sit a few people, start a few that are showing signs of encouragement and people that seem like they want to get out there and play. And what Ryan was talking about, I want to preface this, when he was talking about the Monday off, he's talking about the Stokes comment. Eric Stokes basically said in the after practice the other day that, man, he misses his victory Monday, having Mondays off. And it's like, I know I read that and I was like, dude, what the crap? Like, that's the message you want to send. I want to win a game so I can get an extra day off. Like, what? What do we – anyway, and if they do win, if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm going, no, get your butts back in here tomorrow. Like, we've got work to do. But anyway, I do want to say this as we wrap up. One final stat. According to PFF, and I know it's a small sample size with Randall, actually 173 snaps. He graded out as a 79.9, the second best player on this roster this year. For all those people, though, that are saying, now you're seeing Davante Adams made Aaron Rodgers. Davante Adams in Vegas, 76.7. Randall Cobb is actually grading out better this year than Davante Adams is. He's had 63 targets and only 38 receptions. So do with that what you will. I think it's the old story, JJ, is, it's not necessarily Belichick or Brady. It's Belichick and Brady. It's not necessarily Aaron Rodgers or Davante Adams. It's Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. And it just sucks that it had to come to an end. But bring us home here, JJ. Any final thoughts, man?
Man, I think they're definitely, when I was talking today, I was hitting on a bunch of negatives and downers, but there are a lot of things that you could be excited about from that Buffalo Bills game. There's a lot of reason to believe that maybe the team is kind of finding their footing. You're hearing throughout the week, Aaron Rodgers has made a lot of comments talking about how they are building on some positives from that game, that they're practicing well, that the guys are showing more energy. You're hearing from some of the other leaders like Jair about how this team needs to just stack up some wins here and remember how to be a winning team. And I think that that's not just empty words. There is merit to these guys. Don't have any confidence in themselves or in their teammates. This is something we saw at the end of last season. Really seems to have carried over this week. And I look at the Patriots game, and the Patriots are not a roll over and die team. They're a decent team. They have their problems, but they are not bottom of the barrel bad. And taking them to overtime in a really weird and clunky game. And the reason that the Packers won that game is because they believed they were going to win it.
Yep.
They believed in themselves. They felt like, we still are the Green Bay Packers. I think that there is merit to the idea of just get a win by whatever means necessary against the Lions, even though I think that a 1 or 2 or 3 point win over the Lions is not something that really any team in the league should be proud of, because the Lions are that bad. But I don't think that there is zero value in that. I think the Packers could still take positives out of that going forward and continue to build confidence in themselves. So there is certainly hope for the team to start putting some better football out there. And we know they have the horses to go toe-to-toe with anybody if they are playing to the best of their abilities and actually believing in themselves and lifting each other up and making teammates better. This is still a really good football roster. So, a big part of why you hear so much frustration from all of us is not that the team stinks. It's the reason that this team stinks. It's how fixable it is. It's how close success really is, and how it's like, from our vantage point, it feels like you're just not winning because you just don't want it enough. And that is part of what's so frustrating. So that is also a reason for optimism and encouragement, is that it would be that easy to turn around if you decided to do it. And sure, you could get hot and go on and win the whole dang thing. It is absolutely possible with the guys that we have. But some stuff has to change. But
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
Real
there we go.
quick.
I am looking forward to this game, though.
Cool.
And also, not for nothing, you lost to the Bills. You can make an argument that they are the best team in football. You lost to the Bills by 10. A field goal could have been lucky. A play could have went the opposite way. Wasn't there a touchdown that was called back?
Yep.
There's seemingly every single week.
Yep.
That changes things up. And take that little motivation that you had at the end of the game, and all that needs is that little spark, and you're good to go. You can take that and ride it. And I think that might be able to happen.
I know this, man. I'm going to have you on speed dial, Thomas. After every loss for the rest of the season, I'm calling you and you're going to pep me up. As we
Give me about 6 hours after the loss, though.
So as we wrap up the Packers injury report going into the Lions game, we'll just read this and then we're out. Looks like out of the game is going to be Devondre Campbell. They said that Quay Walker will have green dot duties. For those of you know, that doesn't mean he soiled his diaper. That means he's going to have the helmet with the headset in it. So he's going to be kind of calling the plays on defense. That's kind of cool. Shamar Jean-Charles is also out. Questionable is David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, and Preston Smith. I personally believe that Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins may be playing. That'll be cool to see them both back in the lineup again. But at the same time, man, not at the expense of setting them back any further. I think Bach's about done. But, yeah, it just sucks. It sucks to see what he's gone through the last couple of years. And that's what's amazing about last year as we wrap up. I mean, the fact that pretty much the whole year we didn't have our all-pro left tackle. It's just wild to me that we still made it as far as we did. But, yeah, so I'm kind of leaning towards sit Alan Lazard and let these young receivers get some reps against the Lions and see what we got. Let's see if Samore, if that was just a flash in the pan or not. You never know. So with that being said, we're going to get out of here. I can't thank y'all enough for coming on here with me. We just wanted to kind of get a state of the Packers address here and see where everybody was at. I think we covered all the bases, which is really, really cool. I know you guys definitely gave me a lot to think about. So that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in on the pod. Appreciate you making us a part of your day. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack.
Third down, inches to go. To Bader. 17 to 14. Cowboys out in front. Starr begins the count.